There's an unspoken rule in society: fit in, follow the crowd, and avoid conflict. The moment you break away, challenge the norm, or refuse to conform, people start whispering. Some will resent you, others will outright hate you. David knew this all too well. For years, he was the nice guy, always helping, always available, always putting others first. Whenever someone needed a favor, he was the first to step up. And at first, it felt good. It felt like he was doing the right thing. But something changed. The more he gave, the more people expected. No gratitude, no respect, just endless demands. The moment he said no, people turned on him. Suddenly, he was selfish. Suddenly, he was the problem. Sound familiar? This isn't just about David. This is about you, about all of us. We live in a world where being agreeable is rewarded and setting boundaries is punished. But here's the truth. You cannot be truly free if you are afraid of being disliked. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They understood that true freedom comes from within, not from approval, not from validation, but from the ability to stand firm in your values. And in this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll explore why being disliked is the key to freedom, how to stop seeking approval, and why embracing this mindset will make you untouchable. Have you ever experienced this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk. 1. The courage to be disliked. There's a deep-rooted fear that keeps most people trapped in a cycle of approval seeking. A silent prison built not of walls and bars, but of expectations and the fear of rejection. It's the reason why so many hesitate to speak their mind, to say no, to set boundaries. Because the moment they do, someone, somewhere, will take offense. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If you want to be free, you must be willing to be hated. Not because you seek conflict, but because you refuse to be controlled by the shifting opinions of others. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at his time, knew that no matter how just his rule was, people would still criticize him. Seneca, despite his wisdom, had enemies who despised him. Epictetus, once a slave, learned that the only thing he could truly govern was his own mind, not the perception of others. They knew that freedom is not granted by the world. It's taken by those strong enough to stop apologizing for being themselves. David learned this the hard way. He wasn't looking for praise. He didn't help others because he expected something in return. He just believed that kindness was meant to be given freely. But over time, he started to notice a pattern. The gratitude that once felt warm and genuine became cold and transactional. People stopped saying thank you. They started assuming he'd always be available, always willing to sacrifice his own time and his own needs. Then one day his boss asked him to cover another shift, last minute as always. He had plans, something important to him for once. So, for the first time, he said no. The reaction was instant. A sigh, an annoyed glance. Wow, I thought you were a team player. It stung hard. But then came something worse, the silence. People who once greeted him warmly now barely acknowledged him. Co-workers he considered friends started treating him like an outsider. And when he stopped lending money to a relative who never paid him back, the resentment in their voice was unmistakable. You've changed. You only care about yourself. I thought you were better than this. He could have caved. He could have gone back to saying yes, to being the person everyone leaned on, but no one truly valued. But this time, he didn't. And it was in that discomfort, in that space of being alone with his decision that he realized something. He felt free. The weight he carried for years, the silent pressure of always being the good guy, had finally lifted. He started seeing relationships for what they truly were. Not all of them were built on respect. Many were built on convenience. And when that convenience ended, so did their interest in him. But the people who remained? They were the ones who valued him for who he was, not for what he could do for them. Think of a tree standing in a storm. The wind howls, the rain pounds, the branches bend, but the roots hold. The tree does not beg the wind to be gentle. It does not chase after leaves that are torn away. It stands because that is what it was meant to do. You are that tree. The world will push and pull, whisper and judge. People will misunderstand you. They will dislike you for reasons beyond your control. But your roots, your values, your principles, your self-respect must be strong enough to hold firm. Because if you let the wind dictate your stance, you will spend your life swaying in directions that are not your own. Most people live their entire lives fearing rejection. They water down their thoughts, say yes when they mean no, and let people cross their boundaries just to keep the peace. But peace, bought at the expense of self-respect, is not peace. It's surrender. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control the thoughts of others, only our own actions. Epictetus said it best: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, if you want to grow, if you want to be free, you must stop fearing how others perceive you. So what do you do when the fear creeps in? When you hesitate to stand your ground because you don't want to deal with the fallout? You remind yourself of this: if someone dislikes you for valuing yourself, their approval is never worth having. Next time you find yourself hesitating, afraid of upsetting someone by setting a boundary, ask yourself, am I willing to sacrifice my freedom for their approval? Because that's what it is, a choice. And every time you choose fear over authenticity, you hand over a piece of your power. Think of a warrior stepping onto the battlefield. He does not seek to be loved by his enemies. He does not hesitate because he fears their disapproval. He knows his purpose, his duty to himself, and he fights, not for acceptance, but for his own honor. You are that warrior. So stand strong, let the storm rage, let the leaves fall, and when the sky clears, you'll find that what remains is what was always meant to stay. 2. Freedom is a personal choice. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right approval. They believe freedom is something that will be given to them when they've checked all the right boxes, when they've pleased enough people, when they've proven themselves worthy. But real freedom doesn't work that way. Freedom is not something granted by society, luck, or privilege. It is a choice, a state of mind. The way you decide to see yourself, the way you respond to the world around you. Two people can be in the exact same situation and experience it completely differently. One will see a cage, the other is an open door. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling over a vast empire, didn't see power as his freedom. He saw his ability to control his own thoughts and his own reactions as the true source of liberation. Epictetus, a man born into slavery, knew that even in chains he could still be free, because his mind was his own. Two men, two completely different external realities, and yet both reached the same conclusion. Not everyone does. One man sat in his office, exhausted, staring at his resignation letter. He had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, believing that once he reached the top, he'd finally be free. Free from financial stress, from self-doubt, from the feeling that he wasn't good enough. But now, standing on that peak, all he felt was emptiness. The money was there, the title, the recognition. Yet every decision he made still revolved around the expectations of others. What would his family think if he left? What would his colleagues say? Would they call him a failure? Across town, another man sat in a cafe, sipping his coffee, reading a book. He had walked away from a similar life, a high-status job, a steady paycheck, a guaranteed path. People had laughed at him and called him foolish for giving up stability. But he had realized something early on. Stability is not freedom. He could either live trapped in a world that wasn't his, or he could accept that some people would never understand his choices. The first man hesitated. He let fear decide for him. He stayed, and every day that passed, he felt a little less like himself. The second man walked away, embraced the discomfort, and found peace in the unknown. Two people. Two different choices. And that is the difference. It's not the circumstances. It's not the job, the paycheck, or the security. It's the mindset. One man chose comfort over self-respect, and it cost him his freedom. The other chose uncertainty, but found peace in knowing he lived on his own terms. You don't need to walk away from your job, your relationships, or your life to be free. But you do need to stop believing that external conditions are the key to your happiness. You do need to stop waiting for permission to live on your own terms. Imagine standing in a crowded room. The voices around you are loud, pressing in, offering advice, criticism, and judgment. They tell you what you should do, what's best for you. If you listen long enough, their voices become your own. You start doubting yourself, questioning your instincts. But in the middle of all that noise, there is a door, a way out. Most people never take it, because the moment you step through, the voices get louder. They call you reckless, selfish, naive. They say you'll regret it, that you should turn back. Some do. But the ones who don't, the ones who keep walking, discover something remarkable. Silence. Freedom. For the first time, they hear their own thoughts clearly. They make choices based on their own values, not the demands of others. And they realize that the fear of being misunderstood is always greater than the reality of it. Stoicism teaches us that we control our perspective, not the world. Seneca wrote, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is." In other words, your suffering doesn't come from your situation, but from the way you see it. The world will always have opinions. People will always have something to say about how you live your life, but you don't have to carry their words like weights on your shoulders. You don't have to make choices based on their expectations. Next time you hesitate, ask yourself, am I making this choice for me or for them? Because that decision determines everything. 3. The root of suffering. There's a weight most people carry every day, a silent burden they don't even realize is crushing them. It's the stress of trying to control what cannot be controlled, the anxiety of worrying about things outside of their power, the disappointment of expecting the world to work the way they want it to, and it's exhausting. Most suffering doesn't come from reality. It comes from resistance to reality, from clinging to what should have been and what could have been instead of accepting what is. We suffer when we try to control the thoughts of others, when we obsess over outcomes we cannot dictate, and when we tie our happiness to things beyond our reach. But what if we stopped? The Stoics believed that suffering isn't caused by events themselves, but by our judgment of them. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them." We don't suffer because of rejection, failure, or misfortune. We suffer because we expect things to go a certain way, and when they don't, we resist. One man built his life around being liked. Every decision he made, every action he took, was carefully calculated to avoid upsetting anyone. He agreed when he wanted to disagree. He stayed silent when he wanted to speak. He sacrificed his own needs for the comfort of others. And for years it worked. People praised him and called him kind and reliable. But inside, he was drowning. The exhaustion of pretending, the quiet resentment of never being true to himself, it was suffocating. Then one day, it happened. He said no. It was a small thing. A friend asked him for yet another favor, and for the first time, he refused. Not because he was angry, not because he wanted revenge, but because he was tired. The reaction was immediate. Disappointment, a cold response, a shift in tone. He could feel it. Something had changed. And for a moment, the old fear crept in. Did I just ruin this relationship? Did I just become the bad guy? But then something surprising happened. Nothing. The world didn't collapse. The sky didn't fall. Life went on. And in that moment, he realized how much unnecessary suffering he had carried, how much energy he had wasted trying to prevent something that, in the end, didn't even matter. He had spent years trying to control the uncontrollable, trying to make sure no one was ever upset with him, trying to manage how people saw him and how they reacted to him. And in the process, he had given up the only thing he ever truly had control over, himself. We fear rejection, but rejection is not the enemy. We fear failure, but failure is inevitable. What truly destroys us is the belief that these things define us, that we must fight against them at all costs. But what if we let go? What if, instead of trying to control the uncontrollable, we focused only on what was within our power? Imagine holding onto a rope that's burning your hands. The harder you grip, the deeper it cuts. The pain is unbearable. But instead of letting go, you hold on tighter, hoping it will stop. It never does. The suffering only increases. Most people live their lives like this, clutching onto things that only bring them pain. The need for approval, the obsession with perfection, the impossible desire to make everyone happy. But here's the truth. Happiness begins the moment you release the rope. Stoicism teaches us to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You cannot control whether people like you. You cannot control whether they approve of your choices, but you can control whether you let their opinions dictate your life. You can control your reaction, your perspective, your peace. Yet most people struggle with this because they've been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to how others perceive them. They fear that if they don't meet expectations, they will be abandoned. But what if that fear was just an illusion? Picture yourself walking through a storm. The rain pours, the wind howls, but you keep moving forward. People around you are running for shelter, covering their heads, fighting against the weather. But you don't. You simply keep walking, untouched by the chaos around you, because the storm is not yours to control. Most people live like the ones running, panicked, desperate, fighting against forces they were never meant to control. But the few who understand the power of letting go, they walk forward, unshaken, because they know that their peace is not dictated by the storm. It's dictated by their ability to keep walking. So ask yourself, what are you holding on to? What is the rope that's burning your hands? What storm are you trying to control? And more importantly, are you ready to let it go? 4. Letting go of competition and manipulation. Some people spend their entire lives chasing a race they never agreed to run. They measure their worth by how much they have compared to others, how far ahead they seem, and how well they manipulate the game to their advantage. They are consumed by competition, by comparison, by the belief that their value is determined by where they stand in relation to someone else. But this is not freedom. This is a different kind of slavery, the kind that chains you to other people's opinions, other people's successes, other people's failures. It is an invisible leash, tightening with every anxious glance at someone else's life. The more you compete, the more you need to win. The more you manipulate, the more you fear losing control. And suddenly you're no longer living for yourself. You're living for a race you never chose. Stoicism teaches us that true power comes not from being ahead of others, but from being in control of ourselves. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." The moment you stop needing to prove yourself, you become untouchable. The moment you stop trying to manipulate outcomes, you become free. Imagine a man climbing a ladder. He looks up, sees others ahead, and pushes himself harder. He looks down, sees others below, and feels momentarily satisfied, but only for a moment. Because the higher he climbs, the more unstable he feels. If he stops, he fears being overtaken. If he slips, he fears the fall. And so he never stops climbing, never rests, never enjoys the view. Now imagine another man. He steps off the ladder. He walks his own path, unbothered by the climb. He is not afraid of someone else being higher. He does not waste energy fearing who is behind him. He is free, because he is no longer playing a game that isn't his. Which one are you? Competition can push us to improve, but when it becomes a measure of our worth, it becomes a prison. When we tie our happiness to being better than others, we hand over our peace to forces we cannot control. Because no matter how good you are, there will always be someone better. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone achieving more. And the moment you start competing for approval, you are no longer in control. You are a servant to the expectations of others. But it goes deeper than that. Some people, unable to compete, turn to control instead. If they cannot outrun others, they manipulate them. They try to bend people to their will, to influence opinions, to ensure outcomes favor them. But control is an illusion. The more you try to force someone's respect, the less real it becomes. The more you try to hold power over someone, the weaker you actually are. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone desperately trying to impress others, clinging to validation, always needing to be in control? They are not powerful. They are fragile. Their peace depends on others obeying them, on things going exactly as they planned. The moment reality doesn't comply, their world crumbles. And yet, those who walk away from the need to control are untouchable. They do not need everyone to agree with them. They do not need to manipulate others into admiration. They simply exist, secure in who they are, indifferent to the noise around them. You do not need to manipulate to be respected. You do not need to compete to be valuable. Your worth is not determined by someone else's position. Think of the ocean. It does not compete with the rivers that flow into it. It does not manipulate the waves to crash a certain way. It simply is. Powerful, unmoved, free. This is the mindset of a Stoic. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." When we live for competition, when we seek to control others, we give up the one thing we should never surrender, our own self-respect. Let go of the race. Step away from the need to win. Stop chasing validation in a game that was never meant to define you. The moment you do, you will find what was missing all along: peace. 5. Breaking free from social norms and expectations. From the moment we are born, society hands us a script. It tells us how to act, what to believe, and who we should become. We are expected to follow the path laid out before us, to get the right education, choose the right career, build the right kind of life. If we stray too far, we are met with resistance. Most people spend their lives trapped by this invisible force. They obey expectations, not because they want to, but because they fear what will happen if they don't. The fear of disappointing family, the fear of being judged, the fear of standing alone. But here's the truth. Living by someone else's script is not living at all. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus, a man who was born into slavery, did not let his circumstances define him. He rejected the idea that his fate was dictated by others. Instead, he focused only on what was within his control, his own actions and his own values. And because of that, he was free even while bound in chains. Freedom does not come from meeting expectations. It comes from breaking them. Imagine yourself as a bird in a cage. The door is open, but you don't leave. Because for so long you've been told that outside is dangerous, that you won't survive, that life inside the cage is safer and more predictable. And so you stay. You convince yourself it's not so bad. You don't even try to fly. But what if you did? What if you ignored the voices telling you to stay put? What if, instead of fearing the unknown, you embraced it? Most people never do. Most people never take that first step because they are too afraid of what others might say, too afraid of the discomfort that comes with stepping away from what is expected. But those who do, those who walk away from a life that isn't theirs, find something most people never will: peace. A young man grew up with one expectation drilled into his mind: becoming a doctor. His parents had made sacrifices, his family had a reputation, and to them, this was the only acceptable path. He never questioned it. He went to school, studied hard, passed the exams, he did everything right. But inside, he was miserable. He hated the work, the long hours, the stress, the feeling that his life was not his own. Every day, he put on a mask, pretending he was fine. Because to walk away, to say no, would mean disappointing the people who raised him. So he stayed. Years passed, and the weight grew heavier. He envied those who had chosen their own path. He resented his career, his life, and his choices. But he had spent so long doing what was expected that he didn't know how to stop. He was trapped. Until one day, he wasn't. One conversation changed everything. An older colleague, a man who had spent decades in the profession, looked at him and said, "If you're this unhappy now, imagine how you'll feel in 20 years. It hit him like a thunderbolt. He realized that his life was slipping away, one day at a time. That the only thing keeping him in this prison was himself. That if he didn't take control, no one would do it for him. So he quit. His family was disappointed. Some called him foolish, others were angry. But for the first time in his life, he was free. Society wants you to believe that your worth is tied to your ability to conform. That the right degree, the right job, and the right life will make you happy. But happiness does not come from living up to expectations. It comes from rejecting them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." How many people go through life never truly living? How many die with regrets, knowing they spent their years pleasing others instead of themselves? Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is the life you've always known, the safe, predictable, expected path. In front of you is the unknown. It is terrifying, but it is also limitless. Most people turn back, but the ones who step forward, they soar. 6. Building equal and healthy relationships. There is a silent mistake that ruins relationships, not just romantic ones, but friendships, family ties, and professional bonds. It's the belief that for a relationship to work, one person must yield, must sacrifice, and must play small to keep the other happy. This is not love. This is not respect. This is control in disguise. People often think relationships require compromise. That's true to an extent. But what most people call compromise is often just one person giving up their needs to satisfy another. They become trapped in a cycle of pleasing, adjusting, and bending to fit someone else's expectations. And the result? Resentment, exhaustion, a slow erosion of self. A real relationship, one built on respect, not control, is balanced. Both people stand as equals. Both are free to express themselves without fear of rejection or punishment. And most importantly, neither feels the need to manipulate or control the other. Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control others, only our own actions. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Many people suffer in relationships not because of actual conflict, but because of the fear of upsetting someone, the fear of losing approval, and the fear of standing their ground. They silence themselves to keep the peace, but peace built on self-betrayal is not peace. It's quiet surrender. Imagine two people in a boat. One rows tirelessly while the other sits still, letting the boat drift. At first, the rower doesn't mind. They believe this is just how it works. But as time passes, fatigue sets in. They start questioning why they are doing all the work. They start feeling resentment, but instead of speaking up, they row harder, hoping the other person will notice. They never do. This is how most relationships fail, not through sudden explosions, but through silent exhaustion. Now picture a different scene. Both people row together. Neither has to do all the work. Neither feels taken for granted. The boat moves smoothly, effortlessly, and with balance. This is what equality looks like. But the problem is that many people are afraid to ask for balance. They fear being labeled difficult. They fear rejection. They fear being disliked for standing up for themselves. And so they keep rowing alone, because somewhere along the way they learned a dangerous lesson, that love, respect, and friendship must be earned by self-sacrifice. Being good means always saying yes, that their value is tied to how much they can give, never how much they receive. And that is where everything goes wrong. When you accept inequality in a relationship, you teach people how to treat you. When you allow someone to take without giving, they will continue to take. When you never speak up, they assume you have nothing to say. Building an equal relationship starts with one simple truth. You must be willing to be disliked. Not everyone will like the version of you that speaks up. Not everyone will appreciate a person who sets boundaries, who demands respect, who refuses to be controlled. But those who truly care for you, those who respect you, will not leave simply because you stand up for yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." That does not mean allowing yourself to be walked over. It means holding yourself to a higher standard, refusing to engage in manipulation, refusing to play mind games, refusing to let insecurity control your actions. It means recognizing that real relationships are built on honesty, not obligation. So what does this look like in real life? It means saying no when something doesn't feel right, even if it disappoints someone. It means refusing to beg for attention or validation. It means not reacting emotionally to manipulation. When someone tries to guilt trip you, you remain calm. When someone demands more than they give, you step back. It means walking away from relationships that demand your silence instead of valuing your voice. Think of a tree standing tall. It does not bend itself unnaturally to please the wind. It does not shrink itself because another tree is taller. It simply grows, strong, unshaken, rooted in its own strength. That is how you must stand in your relationships. Stop rowing alone. Stop fearing disapproval. Stop believing that love requires the sacrifice of self, because the moment you demand equality, you will see who truly values you. 7. Accepting imperfection. Perfection is an illusion. Yet, most people spend their lives chasing it. They believe that if they could just be flawless, if they could eliminate every weakness, avoid every mistake, and meet every expectation, then they would finally be accepted. Then they would finally be enough. But that day never comes. Because no matter how much you try, someone will always find a reason to dislike you. No matter how much you improve, someone will always think you are lacking. And no matter how much you chase perfection, you will never reach it, because perfection does not exist, and it never has. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology confirmed it. Epictetus said, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself against their accusations, but reply, 'You obviously do not know about my other vices, or else you would have mentioned these as well.'" In other words, people will always find something to criticize, and if they don't, they'll invent something. You cannot control what they think, you cannot control what they say, but you can control whether you let it bother you. Imagine standing in front of a broken mirror. No matter where you stand, your reflection is distorted. If you try to fix the cracks, you only make more. If you try to perfect the image, it only gets worse. This is how most people live, trapped by the reflections of others, trying desperately to change how the world sees them, never realizing that the distortion was never theirs to fix. Now picture yourself walking away from that mirror, no longer trying to adjust the cracks, no longer chasing an image that was never real. That is freedom. And yet, people resist this truth. They believe they must prove their worth to the world. They believe they must fit an impossible standard, and they suffer for it. You see it everywhere. The woman who never feels beautiful enough, no matter how much she changes. The man who never feels successful enough, no matter how much he achieves. The friend who never feels likable enough, no matter how much they please others. They are not chasing success, they are running from rejection. But here's the truth. If someone dislikes you because of your imperfections, that is their problem, not yours. A man walks into a room. He is confident, self-assured, and unbothered. Some admire him, others resent him. Some are drawn to him, others whisper behind his back. But here's what he knows. They do not truly see him. They only see a reflection of their own biases and their own insecurities, and he does not take it personally, because he understands what most never do. You are never really hated or loved for who you are. You are hated or loved for how others perceive you, and perception is beyond your control. So why waste time trying to change it? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The world will always have an opinion. People will always have something to say, but their words are like the wind, temporary, shifting out of your hands. What matters is not the wind itself, but whether you let it push you off course. Some people will resent you simply because you exist in a way that makes them uncomfortable, because your confidence highlights their insecurities, because your choices challenge their beliefs, and that is not your burden to carry. Imagine a river. It does not flow in a straight line. It bends, it curves, it moves around obstacles. But does that make it weak? No. It carves through mountains, it shapes the land, it moves with power despite its imperfections. And the same is true for you. Stop chasing a version of yourself that does not exist. Stop believing that your flaws must be erased before you are worthy of respect. Stop thinking that the opinions of others define your value. You are not perfect, but you were never meant to be. Embrace that, and you will finally be free. 8. Living in the present moment. Most people are trapped in two prisons, one called the past, the other called the future. They replay past mistakes, regrets, and conversations that ended badly. They relive moments of embarrassment, loss, and failure, as if thinking about them enough times will somehow change the outcome. Or they live in the future, constantly worrying, planning, fearing what might come next. And in doing so, they miss the only moment that truly belongs to them, the present. Life is happening now, but so many people are too distracted to notice. They are physically present but mentally elsewhere. Their minds are flooded with what ifs and if only, making it impossible to experience the moment in front of them. They chase a future that hasn't arrived yet while carrying the weight of a past that no longer exists. This is why they suffer. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," because they knew that true peace does not come from controlling the past or predicting the future. It comes from accepting where you are, right now. Imagine a man standing on the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. But instead of enjoying the view, he's obsessed with what the ocean looked like yesterday. or he's anxiously waiting to see what the next wave will bring. He never looks at the water in front of him. He never sees the beauty of the present. This is how most people live. They are so lost in thoughts of yesterday and tomorrow that they never truly experience today. They do not taste their food, hear the music, or feel the warmth of the sun. Their bodies are here, but their minds are somewhere else. But what happens when you finally let go? What happens when you stop regretting the past and stop fearing the future? You become free. Because the truth is, the past is gone. The future isn't real yet. The only thing that exists is this moment. Think about it. How much energy have you wasted on things you cannot change? How many moments have slipped through your fingers because you were too distracted to notice them? How many sunrises, conversations, or simple joys have you missed because your mind was somewhere else? When you focus on the present, you start to see things differently. You stop dwelling on what went wrong yesterday. You stop obsessing over what might happen tomorrow. You see life for what it is, instead of what you wish it would be. You stop waiting to be happy someday, and start living today. The problem is that most people don't realize they are lost in the past or future until it's too late. They assume they'll always have more time. They believe they can put off truly living until everything is perfect. But one day, they look up, and the moments they ignore are gone, and there is no way to get them back. This is why the Stoics practiced mindfulness before it even had a name. They understood that happiness is not found in yesterday or tomorrow. It is found in presence, in awareness, in learning to simply be where you are, as you are. So how do you do it? You stop worrying about what others think. You stop carrying the burden of past mistakes. You stop believing that the future must be controlled before you can enjoy life. You take a breath. You notice the sounds around you. You feel the air on your skin. You remind yourself that this moment is the only thing that is real. Imagine standing in a river. The water flows past your feet, constantly moving, never stopping. You cannot hold on to it. You cannot stop it from changing. The only thing you can do is stand there, feel it, and experience it as it moves. This is life. You cannot freeze time. You cannot rewrite history. You cannot predict what's coming next. But you can be here, now. And if you learn to do that, you will find what most people spend their entire lives searching for: peace. Freedom is not about having no limits. It's not about avoiding conflict, pleasing everyone, or controlling how others see you. It is about standing firm in who you are, embracing imperfection, and refusing to let fear dictate your choices. You've seen how competition, social expectations, and the fear of being disliked keeps so many people trapped. You've seen how suffering comes from trying to control things that are not ours to control. And most importantly, you've seen how true peace comes when we live in the present, unburdened by the past, unafraid of the future. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep running from judgment, adjusting yourself to fit expectations that are not your own? Or will you take the first step toward real freedom, the kind that comes from within? The Stoics did not believe in passive learning. They knew that wisdom means nothing if it is not applied. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca did not just write about resilience, self-control, and inner peace. They lived it. And now it's your turn. Practice setting boundaries without guilt. Stop chasing approval that does not serve you. Accept that imperfection is not a flaw. It is what makes you real. Focus on what you can control and let go of what you cannot. Most importantly, start living, not in the past, not in the future, but at this moment. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever struggled with letting go of others' opinions? Have you ever felt trapped by expectations that were not your own? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Because of this journey to true freedom, it begins today.